face. Each one of you. You own your box today. Strike them, you strike them, you strike them. Because if you do that, man, you'll break the wheel.
UGA, we ballin'. Who let them dogs out? That red and black finna win the game.
Crowd packed in tightly.
I know you see me ballin'. UGA, we ballin'.
Now look, guys, we want to go out here and set the standard for how UGA plays. We have to go out and physically dominate them and change the way they think about what we do.
UGA, we ballin'. We going for the win. Who let them dogs out? That red and black finna win the game. We going for the win.
We already won, coach. It done, coach. Pass on 4th and 1,
guys,
coach. Win
it
every
is
game
Holden
on
with
the road. But
Dawg
Sanford, they
Talk,
can't come,
coming
coach.
to you on
Linebacker
your
got it on
Tuesday
lock.
episode
Running
this
here, get
evening.
your head smashed.
I've been doing a good bit of work to try to kind of get everything lined up like it's supposed to be. Trying to get some video stuff up, so maybe I can get a YouTube page started for us for Dawg Talk. But either way, we're going to run through a little bit of news for our dogs, as well as top 25 drops, so I'm going to put at least our top 10 up there. A couple other things that we've got to go over here. We'll talk a little bit about the quarterback battle. Obviously, that is one huge thing that's been going on, and one of the biggest things that's been talked about all this time. I kind of have been looking back and forth on the TV this evening to see if I can find any kind of information out of the Big Ten. Obviously, that has nothing to do necessarily with the Dogs, but at the end of the end of the year, it may have a lot to do with the Dogs. So we're going to kind of keep an eye on that and see what comes over the least. That's just kind of the way that it is. Really hope that this entire time on our video, at least, hopefully that music hasn't been playing. I've been seeing it trickle right there, but really hope that's not the case. If it is, sorry about that. I will work on getting better at it. For you on podcasts, you're not going to have to worry about that. This will mainly be on the video stream there. But anyways, that's just, neither here nor there, but we'll go ahead and kind of get into some of the info here. Did want to talk to you guys a little bit about Saturday's scrimmage, most of which the biggest thing that was coming in on that information there was Dawg Mathis, I think, was some of the biggest news that kind of came out of it, where I think a lot of the pros out there, and I think even wasn't Aaron Murray, maybe it was Matt Stinchcomb I saw early on SEC, I think it was the SEC Network, was saying that they think Dawg Mathis will be the starter come game time. Maybe so. I'm not 100%. It'd be cool to see. I know he's definitely a mobile quarterback, which may be kind of what they're looking at. A little bit of news outside of just the team in itself, and that is tailgating. I'm reading here that they have limited to fans with tickets are the only ones that can tailgate, and that it can take place in campus lots, even though it says in there that you can't have tailgating on campus. I'm assuming in the lots is okay. This comes from the Georgia Athletic Association, and that says that fans are allowed to gather near their vehicles with family or those of which they traveled with and plan to sit with in Sanford Stadium. So I don't know. I don't know if you're going to have campus police, maybe even more than that. You may even have a whole lot more than that as far as everything else goes. Bringing in sheriffs, bringing in the local city of Athens police. I don't know, maybe to monitor that. Are they going to go around and say, hey, let me see your ticket to the game? That's probably the easiest way to find people. But then it's, how are you going to prove that somebody technically rode with somebody? I really don't know. We'll kind of see how things shake out with that. That's kind of how it goes. Some other news on the recruiting trail. 4-star offensive lineman Elijah Judy has decommitted from Georgia. He did say that his final decision will be made on signing day. I think I may have called him an offensive lineman. He's actually a linebacker. Anyways, we'll see what comes of that once signing day comes around. I think right now it's really hard to recruit guys because everything's in this dead period. So you're really not really relying necessarily, but a lot of your players are going out and doing some of the recruiting for you, which is good for a lot of coaches, obviously not being able to see people. But at the same time, you definitely want to be able to keep the recruiting recruiting going, and it's making it a lot, pretty difficult. Another one in the trails of 5-star quarterback Brock Vandegrift. Excuse me, I can't speak this evening. Evidently, he had a huge game on ESPNU this past Friday night. The number 2 in the state, Prince Avenue Christian, took on number 1 in the state, Rabun County. And also in that, you had Gunnar Stockton, the other 5-star quarterback, he's committed to South Carolina for the class of 2022, so he's a junior. Obviously, Brock is a senior, committed to Georgia for next year. Brock's night went like this: 18 for 28, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, which was the main difference in the game. Obviously, that's a 64.3% completion rating. He did have 11 rushes for 57 yards. Gunnar Stockton having a really, really good night. Went 19 for 30. Pass percentage wasn't all that great at 63.3%. 187 yards, had 2 touchdowns, 1 pick in the air, but then he also rushed the ball 30 times for 189 yards and got another 3 touchdowns. He scored 2 passing touchdowns, and his 3 rushing touchdowns, that made up everything. That made up all of Rabun County's points. The final does end 38-31, and it sounded like a close game. For a while there, it was not. With about 10 minutes left in the third quarter, that's when Rabun County actually went up 31-7, and that's when Brock Vandegrift really showed out. He showed up, and got the game tied up at 31 with about 4.5 minutes to play in the game. They did actually have a chance to go down and score at the end of the game, and Brock actually got hit on the play, and when he did, he actually threw his 3rd interception of the night, and that wrapped it up. Time was not going to be on their side from that point on, and Rabun County does get the win by a touchdown there, again, 38-31. But he did look good, outside of the few interceptions that he did throw, which was unfortunate. That's kind of how it ended up. But Gunnar Stockton, I know they're good friends. They actually played travel ball back in the day together. He's going to be a good one for South Carolina. It's going to be fun competition in the years to come between those two guys facing off against each other. In some of your other high school news, I know a good game that I'm looking forward to coming up that's a little closer to my area down here is Valdosta. We'll be traveling to Colquitt County on the 25th. So it's actually the day before Georgia plays Arkansas, which Georgia and Arkansas is obviously the 26th. The day before that will be a good game in some high-ranking classes there. With Rush Probst there at Valdosta playing against his old team in Colquitt County. I think that's pretty much everything I've got in some of this high school news. We do have 11 days till kickoff at Arkansas on the 26th. Looking forward to it. I know everybody pretty much is. Going through our top 10 here that I've thrown on the page for you for our video watchers. Let me say that maybe a little bit better than I did. Clemson does find themselves at the top of this page. Alabama comes in at the number 2 spot, Oklahoma 3. Georgia stays there at the number 4 spot. Followed up right behind them now is Florida at 5, LSU at 6. Notre Dame comes in at 7th. 8th is Auburn, 9th is Texas, and 10th is Texas A&M. 2 of your other SEC schools, Tennessee does jump in and find themselves in the top 15 at 15, and Kentucky finds themselves in 23rd, 24th. They had the same point rankings as Appalachia State at 238 points. So they're tied for 23rd. I'm just going to say they're 24th, maybe to just kind of keep it a little bit simpler. So you do have in the top 10, you have, 6 teams out of the SEC. Let me double check that. Yeah, 6 teams in the SEC. Georgia, our Dogs, being in the 4 spot. Obviously, they've taken out the Big Ten and the Pac-12 teams, so that's kind of how your new ranking was able to come out this past weekend. Like I said, I've been kind of trying to pay attention on the TV a little bit this evening to see if I see any more news come out as far as the Big Ten goes. We'll see. We'll see what's going to come of it. Obviously, if they decide they're going to play, then that ranking is going to change again. They may as well have kept them in. I was glad to see them take them out though, because I don't really want to see a team in there that's not playing. That's just my kind of take and pick on that. But anyways, kind of moving on from some of that, we'll talk a little bit about the scrimmage as I moved on through this. DeJuan and Carson were looking really good. I think I know DeJuan and JT Daniels got some good snaps with the ones. JT, I think this past scrimmage actually was able to take a little bit of a step back, and he wasn't really out there as much as I think as he normally is. Don't think it's anything necessarily injury related. Obviously, he had the ACL tear a little over a year ago there at USC, and has been committed to the Dogs and with the Dogs I think since May is when he came in. So he's with us. Don't think anything's really bothering him or anything. I know he's not 100% back as far as the knee goes, but I think this is actually going to be Kirby Smart's way of kind of getting him fired up maybe and putting a little bit of edge on him to make him, really want to compete for that number one spot. But I did see where DeJuan's got a lot, and there's a lot of hype around DeJuan Mathis maybe coming in as the starter this season. We'll see. I'm looking forward to finding out who they do come out with. And I'm going to tell you this. Before that 26th, when this season kicks off in 11 days, you're not going to know who the starting quarterback is. Unless something just out of this world happens, or unless Kirby's just like, here, take this and do with you what you will. Don't see that happen. But regardless, right now I do know that DeJuan looks good. I know JT looks good. And I will say this, though. From Todd Monken coming in, I've known that he is an air raid kind of guy. And I know that I think that kind of fits and grooves really well with JT's style. We'll see. Maybe DeJuan has that really good scrambling ability to where you can't doubt it, you can't deny it. Maybe they're saying, hey, we got to put this guy in here. He is a playmaker. We got to have the ball and give the ball to the playmakers. Not that JT Daniels didn't. I'm sure he can get out there and throw bombs all day. But I think having that ability to be able to get out of the pocket if you need to, maybe even get a few yards. Look at LSU last year with Joe Burrow. Made a huge difference for him, especially in that SEC championship game that they played against him. We had him sacked in the backfield many a time, and he got loose, and well, you see what happened at the end of that one. Let's not relive it. But anyways, like I've said 15 times already in this podcast, looking forward to seeing what comes of it. Obviously, DeJuan Mathis seems to be the favorite for everybody right now. Let's go through a few of these injuries real quick while we're on it. The FSU transfer Trey McKitty is one of the big ones right now there at the tight end position. He had orthoscopic knee surgery a little bit over a week ago, and it's going to take him about 3 to 5 weeks, I think, is the timeout on that before you kind of can get recovered and get back in things. So I'm going to project him to be back at the earliest against Auburn in week 2, at the latest. I wrote on here week 4 against Bama because I really think he's going to be pushing, but that is, if it's 5 weeks of recovery, you're looking at the Alabama game, maybe he's back. But you also have to put this in perspective that you got a couple guys in Darnell Washington and John Fitzpatrick who could fill in those positions, and more than likely they will be, obviously, in week 1, 2, 3, possibly even 4. If one of those guys steps up and is really in the game, again, back to saying we got to have playmakers in the game, one of these guys could be the main focus on that tight end position, and they could find themselves there. And old Trey McKitty, he may not find himself back in that spot. Now, I know he's a playmaker. He's a really good player. But so was Jacob Eason when he got hurt. And you see Jake Fromm rolled on with it for the rest of the year. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. But if we're really keying in, needing him, and wanting to get him in that position, I'm thinking the earliest is Auburn. The latest is Alabama. Probably even that Kentucky game following that. He may miss the entire first half of the season, get that bye, and be back for Florida. We'll see kind of how things shake on that. Also, you got the freshman and wide receiver Arian Smith, which he tore his meniscus back in mid-July. He'll be out 4 to 6 weeks, and after he does come back, then he's also got to get back in the groove of the offense. And we've got we've got a good number of wide receivers there that I think we can count on. So he's not necessarily missed because I know he's going to be a good player. But we've at least got some depth in that position to be able to move forward, and it doesn't put a strain on us in a situation where we've already got Dominique Blaylock out with an ACL for the season. So if you took Dom out and then all of a sudden maybe Demetrius Robertson falls and George Pickens, then not having Arian will make a big impact because, again, we do have depth in that position, but once you start taking out some of the top dogs, the depth in comparison to quality starts to kind of take a dip. One of your other injuries that happened earlier in the fall scrimmages is the freshman defensive back Keely Ringo with his labrum. He, again, is the other guy that is going to be out for the season. Luckily, that is the main kind of deal there that I've got for our injuries. So we're kind of sitting okay. I haven't seen a lot of numbers as far as corona related or any kind of, what do they call it now? Man, I'm blanking on it. Not attraction. Anyways, you know what I'm saying. Being where you're around it and could contract it. And speaking of it, I did hear earlier that LSU's Ed O was saying that most of his team has contracted the virus. I don't think that necessarily means like this week. I think it's maybe over a span of time that pretty much almost his entire team, what it sounds like saying most, has had to deal with it in some capacity. A few standout guys that I'm looking forward to seeing this season: defensive lineman Jalen Carter, wide receiver Marcus Rosemy. That kind of goes back to the Arian Smith conversation there, and having that depth in the wide receiver position. Arian's a freshman, and Marcus Rosemy I thought was a freshman too. I would have to look back on my page to double check. But anyways, a couple of other ones are linebacker MJ Sherman, offensive lineman Tate Radledge, and Cedric Von Prawn. Looking forward to those guys doing what they can. The other guy I think we had talked about a couple of weeks ago was Olsen, wasn't it? I've got it written down in here. May take me a minute to find it. Hopefully I don't make too much noise on here, at least on the mic, so that way I can get to it, because I would love to give you that information and actually have the name correct instead of having it incorrect. What was the guy's name? Okay, there's all my injuries way back then. It's unreal that it's been that long. Doing this thing once a week makes it a little tougher to kind of keep up with most of that information because you're constantly moving through it. So, but I mean, that's what it is. I keep wanting to say Matt Olson, but I think that was a guy that maybe played for like the Colts or something. So I think I may be losing my mind on that one. Yeah, so I've gone through quite a few pages here, and I still have not found his name. So, anyways, his name's Olson, if I remember correctly what it was that's in it. So we ran through our top 10. We've talked a little bit about some news around the league, upcoming in high school games, college games, obviously, like we've got on the page here. Arkansas, we get to play at 4 o'clock on the SEC Network on the 26th. It's coming up, that Auburn game. I think I went through last time some times that it came out, and you can see if you're watching on video for podcasts. Sorry, you can't really see this. Check out the YouTube page that I'm going to put it up. I'll put it in a link once I get it up. But as you can see on the side here, you can see the few games that we do have times for. Don't have times for the Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Mississippi State, South Carolina, or the Vandy game. Pretty much the back half of the season outside of the Tennessee and Kentucky there in the beginning and the middle. But all your other ones, you got the primetime game at home against Auburn in week 2 on the 3rd, and that one will be on ESPN. And then obviously the other one is the big Alabama game, also on primetime CBS on the 17th of October there in Tuscaloosa. That, to me, is going to be the key game of the year, at least in the SEC. Following that right up with the Alabama-LSU game, I think the Auburn-Georgia game in week 2 is going to be a really good one. And then the biggest one in the East is going to be the Georgia-Florida game, obviously. Especially now that they've got, as you can see on our list here, now that they've got Georgia at 4th and Florida at 5th, maybe these guys can kind of sit right there together once we start to get deeper into the season. And maybe by the time we get there, I think that Georgia-Alabama game is going to make a difference in it. And let me look at Florida here. Florida's also playing A&M and LSU before they play Georgia. So you could see a 1 spot for Florida. You could see a 1 spot for our Dogs as well. Hope not. It's going to be really, really tough having Auburn in week 2 and then having Alabama in week 4. Look at that. Those first 5 weeks of the season, you're playing a ranked team every week, except for the first week against Arkansas. So kind of find ourselves lucky getting to open up with Arkansas. Don't rule them out, though. Don't rule them out. It doesn't matter. You can't, as bad as Arkansas has been, you just cannot rule them out because anything in this day and age can happen. Hopefully it won't to our Dogs. Definitely don't want to open up a season like that, but I do think we're lucky to get to open up with Arkansas to kind of start to figure our offense out. Maybe not give a lot of information out as far as, hey, this is what the Dogs are looking like this year, but maybe get enough in to where this offense starts to get comfortable to where, the defense, I think the defense is going to be stout. I think we're going to have the number one defense in the nation, and I don't just say that out of Georgia bias. I say that because I truly do think that the Dogs are going to find themselves at the top in the defense again this season. So definitely looking forward to it. But look at that. You got number 8 and number 4 Georgia playing week 2, 15 Tennessee coming in week 3, number 2 Alabama in week 4, and number 24 Kentucky in week 5 before we get the bye week on the 31st, and we play number 5 ranked Florida to round out our top 25 play of the season, unless Missouri, Mississippi State, South Carolina, or Vandy was to find themselves in the top 25 by that time. If the Big Ten doesn't join, I think there is a possibility you could see. Well, it's kind of hard to say because if I'm looking at it here, I got South Carolina picked at 2-8, Vandy at 0-10, Missouri at 3-7, and who was the other? Mississippi State at 4-6. So out of those, maybe Mississippi State can pull in there, but that late in the season, if you don't have that great a record, I don't see how you find yourselves in the top 25. So a hard start of the season for our Dogs this year, but I think once we get past Florida, we should, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we should be able to cruise on through the rest of the season. And I will say this, looking at this schedule again, I think if we can get through that juggernaut of the first half, get past Auburn, fight hard against Tennessee, get a good win, fight hard against Alabama, would love to get that win. But even if we don't, I think we can fight hard, get the win against Kentucky, take the week off after having to play Kentucky following that Alabama game, because that's going to be these first 4 weeks of the season. We're going to get beat up pretty hard as far as just guys. It's hard-nosed tackle football. That's all there is to it in the SEC. Y'all know that. So I think having that bye before we play Florida is going to make a big difference in it. Hopefully we can get the win there and find ourselves hopefully at a cruising pace before we get to the SEC championship game nearing the end of the season. If we can make it there this season, I believe that we can. I think we've got all of the answers that we need as far as we've got guys. We've got depth in positions. Whether people start to get sick, what happens. I've seen where a lot of these guys are postponing, and maybe if something came up where Corona-related makes you have to postpone a game, I know it would be strange, but maybe we have a Thursday game open where we can, if something happens, these games can be made up on a Thursday. I know it's strange, and it would be weird to see if we could even do that as far as putting a SEC game on a Thursday, but at least if we could, at least it could happen. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that entire process there. But again, if we can maybe have one loss to Alabama once we get past Florida, if we can beat them and take those last 4 games of the season, not easy, but win the games, win them good, and start to get our guys back up and in good health by the end of the season. If we can win those games that we need to get to the SEC championship at the end of the season, I think it'll be great, because then we can, again, try to ease it through the bottom half of that schedule to where when SEC championship time comes, we're ready, and we've got guys back for whoever is up there. I'm picking it to be Alabama. Alabama has a really good team this year. That's why I'm not sure if we can handle them week 4. That's just me trying to take my bias out of it. Not sure if we can handle them week 4, but I do think we're going to turn right back around and see them in the SEC championship, get over the hump that is Alabama, get the win, and find ourselves back in national championship run this season. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. I'll let you guys know if I see anything come up with the Big Ten. Hadn't seen it yet. I know they have been meeting all day on Tuesday, or I guess maybe they voted Monday night, and the The vote was supposed to be in Tuesday, so all of that information was supposed to be together to be able to send out by this evening. Have not seen anything come across the screen yet, so may post that in next week's episode, along with an updated top 10 after this weekend. Not really previewing any of the games coming up this weekend. Got a few good ones, but for the most part, we're going to gear up for next week when the Dogs do take the field the following weekend on the 26th. So that's most of what I've got for you guys this evening. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. Looking forward to seeing, again, the season come up here in just a little while. We're not far from it. But outside of that, you guys tune in next Tuesday when we'll get another episode dropped for you guys.
My cornerback got a pick six, he caught it with one hand back. We scored again, I level leaped, I jumped up, my fan had. My old line, they make a play, they'll hold it down on the bad game. Running back like to turn it up, quarterback the truth with the pad game. Red jersey and last name, in the SEC, we in our own lane. A minute left, we up by 2. You know we ain't losing no home game. We go hard, we practice hard, we play hard, cause we the best. Let win.